For 19 years, my stepmother told anyone who'd listen that I didn't belong in that house. Last Tuesday, she left me a voicemail at 11 p.m., sobbing, because she found out she can't sell it without my signature. I'm Julie, 34, city planner in Savannah, Georgia. My mother died when I was 14, and before the cancer took her, she did something none of us knew about. She put that house, the one that still smells like pine floors in the summer, into a trust. She named one beneficiary, me. Every wall, every room, every inch of that property can't be touched without my consent. The woman who spent 19 years making sure I had nothing is sitting in a house she can't sell, can't refinance, can't do a single thing with because of me. And I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet. Now, before I tell you what happened when I drove back to that house, I need you to understand something. What my stepmother Mila did at that kitchen table, it made a grown man who hadn't cried in 40 years put his face in his hands. If you want to hear every detail of how the woman who threw me out ended up begging for my help, hit subscribe right now and turn on that notification bell, because this one, it doesn't go where you think it does. I'm curious. Drop a comment and tell me where you're listening from tonight and what time it is there. I want to know who's hearing this with me. Okay, so to understand any of this, I have to take you back to a Saturday morning in March of 2005. The morning my father told me he'd met someone new. I was 15 then. My mom, Renee, had been gone a few months. And honestly, I wasn't mad at my dad for dating again. He was barely functioning. He'd lost maybe 30 pounds. Wasn't eating. Some nights I'd find him asleep at the kitchen table with his head on a stack of mom's medical bills. So when he told me there was a woman named Mila Kessler from his grief support group, a woman who made him laugh for the first time since the funeral, I was relieved. That's the part people don't expect. I was happy for him. Mila was 41, slim, always had her nails done. She drove a white Lexus that she kept immaculate, and she had this way of touching my dad's arm when she talked to him. Not clingy, just present. Like she was saying, "I see you," without words. I thought she was exactly what he needed. The first dinner she came to our house, 1847 Gaston Street, in the historic district, she brought yellow tulips. She walked into the kitchen where my mom used to make shrimp and grits every Sunday, looked around and said, "Julie, this is beautiful. Your mother had incredible taste." I almost cried, because nobody had said my mom's name out loud in months. For about 5 months, Mila was perfect. She brought me a silver bracelet for my 16th birthday. She'd sit with me on the back porch, the same porch my mom and I used to sit on, and she'd say, "Tell me about her. Tell me about Renee." And then she moved in. September 2005, and everything started to shift. It was small things first. She rearranged the kitchen, moved my mom's cookbooks off the shelf and replaced them with her own, took down 2 framed photos of my mom from the hallway and put them in a box in the closet. When I asked about it, she said, "Honey, it's hard for your father to see them every day. I'm trying to help him heal." I was 16. I believed her. But here's what I didn't catch until years later. Mila wasn't removing my mother from the house. She was removing me. By Thanksgiving of that year, Mila had redecorated the guest bedroom, my mom's old sewing room, and turned it into what she called her office. She threw out the sewing machine, my mom's Singer from 1988. I came home from school and it was just gone. Mila said it was taking up too much space. I stood in that doorway and I looked at the empty space where the machine used to sit. There was a dent in the carpet from the pedal. 20 years of my mother's foot pressing down, stitching Halloween costumes and throw pillows and the curtains in my bedroom. And all that was left was an oval depression in brown carpet that Mila hadn't even bothered to cover yet. I told my dad. He just looked at me with these exhausted eyes and said, Jules. She's trying to make this place feel like home for all of us." That sentence did something to me, because I thought it was already home. It had been home my whole life. I wanted to say, "It is home. This is where Mom taught me to make pancakes. This is where she used to sing off-key while she did the dishes." I didn't say any of it. I just went to my room and pulled the door shut. The thing about Mila is she never yelled. She never slammed a door. She never said anything outright cruel. Not at first. She was more precise than that. She had this way of making you feel like you were the problem for noticing what she was doing. Like your memory was the inconvenience, not her behavior. January 2006. I was in the kitchen doing homework. Mila came in, poured herself a glass of wine, sat across from me, and said, and I remember every word because I wrote it in my journal that night. She said, "Julie, I need to talk to you about something. Your father and I have been discussing it, and we both feel like you might do better with some space, some independence." I said, "What do you mean?" She smiled, took a sip of wine, and said, "Your grandmother in Macon has that big house all to herself. We think it would be good for you to spend some time there. Get a fresh start." I looked at her. I was 16 years old, and I said, "You're sending me away?" And this is the first thing she ever said to me that I knew in my gut was meant to cut. She leaned forward, still smiling, and said, "Sweetheart, nobody's sending you anywhere. But you have to admit, it's been hard for your father, having a constant reminder of Renee walking around this house every day. You look just like her, and sometimes that's not a gift. A constant reminder." That's what she called me. A constant reminder of my dead mother. And she said it like she was doing me a favor by pointing it out. Like she was being generous enough to tell me the truth about the burden of my own face. I went to my room. I sat on my bed. I could hear Mila downstairs rinsing her wine glass, humming something I didn't recognize. She was comfortable. She'd delivered the message and moved on to the next task in her evening. And I was upstairs, dissolving. 2 weeks later, my dad drove me to Macon. It was a Saturday, February 11th, 2006. I remember because it was raining and the wipers on his truck were streaking. We barely talked the whole drive. When we got to my grandmother Opal's house on Vineville Avenue, he carried my bags to the porch, hugged me, and said, "This is temporary, Jules, just until things settle." He drove away before my grandmother even opened the door. It wasn't temporary. I lived with my grandmother Opal for the next 6 years. I finished high school in Macon. I went to the University of Georgia. I built my entire adult life from that guest room on Vineville Avenue. And here's what kills me. My dad? He didn't fight it. Not once. Not when I called crying the first week. Not when I asked to come home for Christmas and Mila said the house was too chaotic with her family visiting. Not when I stopped calling altogether. Grant Mays, my father, just let me go. And every year, Mila's grip on him got tighter. She managed his money. She answered his phone. She decided who came over and when. If I wanted to visit, I had to go through her. And somehow there was always a reason it wasn't a good time. By the time I was 20, I'd stopped trying. My grandmother Opal was the one who kept me alive. Not literally. I mean, she fed me and put a roof over my head, sure, but she kept the part of me alive that Mila was trying to bury, the part that was my mother's daughter. Opal was 73 when I moved in. Sharp, glasses on a chain, crossword puzzle every morning, and she didn't miss a thing. She'd been a bookkeeper for 38 years, and she had this way of looking at you over her glasses that made you feel like she already knew what you were about to say. She never once said a bad word about my father. She just said, "Your daddy's lost right now, baby. That doesn't mean he doesn't love you. It means he forgot how." But about Mila, Opal was clear. She'd shake her head and say, "That woman has plans, and your father is too tired to see them." I didn't understand what she meant. Not yet. Opal used to keep a photo of my mother on the kitchen windowsill, right above the sink where the morning light came through.
It was from 1998. My mother at 30, laughing at something off camera with her hair in her face. Every morning while Opal made me cheese toast before school, I'd look at that photo and try to remember what my mother's laugh sounded like. Some mornings I could, some mornings I couldn't. Opal never asked about it. She just made sure the photo was always there, always clean, always where the light could reach it. Those years in Macon, I was hurt, yeah, but I was also building something. I got into UGA, studied urban planning, graduated in 2012, got a job with the city of Savannah, same city I'd been exiled from, as a junior planner making $38,400 a year. I found a studio apartment on Habersham Street, 43 blocks from the house I grew up in.
43 blocks. Close enough that I'd sometimes drive past Gaston Street on my way home from work. I'd slow down, just for a second, and look at the porch, my mom's porch, and I'd see Mila's white Lexus in the driveway, and I'd keep driving. And here's the thing that would hit me every single time. I spend my days protecting old houses. That's literally my job. I write preservation briefs and fight city council about setback requirements and argue about which shade of historically accurate paint belongs on a cornice. I save other people's houses. And the one house that mattered most, the one with my mother's pine floors and my mother's garden, I couldn't even park in front of without my hands going tight on the wheel. I didn't go in. Not once. Not for 8 years. During those years, Mila called me exactly 4 times. Each time, she wanted something. She needed my social security number for a tax thing. She wanted my mother's birth certificate. She asked me to sign standard estate paperwork. I said I'd look at it first. She never mailed it. The 4th time, 2019, she asked me to sign a refinancing form. I said, send it. I'll look at it. She hung up. 4 calls in 8 years, and every one was a transaction. There's a weight to a phone call that's only ever about getting something from you. If you've ever had someone cut you off from your own family and then only reach out when they need something from you, if you know what it feels like to be someone's tool instead of someone's daughter, drop a comment. Tell me your story. I read every single one of them. Because what I'm about to tell you next, what I found in my grandmother's closet after she died, is going to explain every single one of those phone calls. And I promise you, it's worse than you think. By 2022, I was 31. I was a senior city planner making decent money. I had a good apartment, a career I was proud of, a couple of close friends. I'd built a life completely separate from Grant Mays and Mila Kessler. And then Opal died. November 3rd, 2022. A stroke in her sleep. She was 89. I drove to Macon for the last time. I cleaned out her house. I sat in her kitchen where she used to make me cheese toast, and I sat there for a long time. My father came to the funeral. Mila didn't. He looked old, thinner than I remembered. He hugged me and said, "I'm sorry, Jules." And I wasn't sure if he meant about Opal or about everything else. He left after 40 minutes. And then, in the back of Opal's bedroom closet, inside a fireproof lockbox with a key taped to the bottom shelf, I found the envelope. It was a manila envelope, thick, worn at the edges. My grandmother's handwriting on the front. For Julie, when the time comes. Inside were 3 documents. The first was a copy of my mother's last will and testament, dated August 12th, 2004, 3 months before she died. The second was a living trust agreement for the property at 1847 Gaston Street, naming me as the sole beneficiary. And the third was a handwritten letter from my mother. I sat on Opal's bedroom floor and read that letter with shaking hands. My knees were pulled up to my chest. I could feel the cold of the hardwood through my jeans. My mother wrote, I'm not going to read the whole thing because I can't get through it. But the important part was this. She knew. She knew my father would remarry. She knew whoever came next might try to take the house. And she wrote, in her own handwriting, "This house was my grandmother Alma's. She gave it to me, and I'm giving it to you.
Nobody can touch it without your name, baby. Nobody. There was one line near the end, and this is the one that broke me open. She wrote, I picked out the gardenias with you when you were 4. You held the pot with both hands and you were so serious about where to put them. Don't let anyone take your gardenias, baby girl. I didn't move for a long time after I read that letter. I just sat there on the floor with the pages in my lap, and I listened to Opal's empty house settle around me, the refrigerator humming, a branch tapping the window. I sat in Opal's kitchen until the sun came up, and I read the trust document over and over, trying to understand what my mother had done for me while she was dying. The trust was ironclad. My mother had worked with a lawyer, a woman named Claudette Newell, before she died. The house was placed in an irrevocable trust. My father had a life estate, meaning he could live there as long as he wanted, but the property could not be sold, mortgaged, refinanced, or transferred without the written consent of the beneficiary, me. I called an attorney the next morning. She reviewed the documents and confirmed. The trust was valid, properly recorded with Chatham County, and no changes had been made to the beneficiary. I was the legal owner of 1847 Gaston Street, in everything but name.
And for maybe 30 seconds, maybe a full minute, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. My mother had reached past her own death, past everything that came after, and she had held on. The house was mine. It had always been mine. All those years I drove past Gaston Street thinking I had nothing left of her, and she had been holding it for me the whole time. I felt this wave go through my chest, like someone had put a hand on my shoulder in a dark room. Then the attorney said something that curdled it. Ms. Mays, I should tell you, there have been 3 separate inquiries to the county recorder's office about this property in the last 11 years. Someone has been trying to find a way around this trust. 3 inquiries. 3 times someone had gone to the county trying to figure out how to sell my mother's house without me. My stomach dropped. I gripped the edge of the desk and my knuckles went white. The warmth I'd felt 10 seconds ago was gone, like someone had opened a window in January. I knew who. She didn't take it. She tried to take it. I sat in my car in the parking lot of that law office for maybe 20 minutes. The engine was off. My hands were on the steering wheel and I wasn't going anywhere. The whole shape of the last 19 years rearranged itself in my head. Every phone call, every request for my signature, every standard estate paperwork. Mila knew. She had to have known about the trust. She wasn't doing my father a favor. She was trying to get me to sign away my rights to the house my mother left me. I didn't file the records request that day. I waited 2 weeks. I needed to sit with what I'd learned and figure out if I wanted to pull the thread or just walk away. And then one morning I woke up and thought about my mother spending her last weeks alive in a lawyer's office instead of resting. And I picked up the phone and filed the request. And that's when I started pulling the thread. I need to tell you about Warren Calloway. Warren lived 3 houses down from Opal on Vineville Avenue. He was 71, retired, used to be a paralegal for a real estate firm in Atlanta for 26 years before he moved to Macon. He wore the same brown cardigan almost every day, and he and Opal used to play Scrabble on Tuesday evenings. After Opal's funeral, Warren brought me a casserole. Tuna noodle. Terrible. But he sat at the kitchen table while I picked at it, and he said something I didn't expect. He said, "Your grandmother talked about that trust more than she talked about anything else. She was terrified someone would get to you before you knew." I looked at him. "You knew about it?" "I helped your mother understand the paperwork in 2004. Claudette Newell drafted it, but your mother brought it to me because she didn't want your father finding out. She wanted a second opinion from someone outside the firm." He paused. "Renee was one of the smartest women I ever met. She planned for everything." Warren became my guide through what I found next. I filed a public records request with Chatham County for every document related to 1847 Gaston Street. It took 6 weeks, and when the packet arrived, 73 pages, I spread it across my dining room table
and Warren drove down from Macon to look at it with me. What I expected was maybe a few property tax forms and some transfer records. What I got was 73 pages of property history going back to 1987. Most of it was routine: tax assessments, utility liens that were paid, a boundary survey from 1996. Warren and I worked through it for 4 hours, flagging pages, reading them, moving on. By page 40-something, I was starting to think maybe the 3 inquiries were just Mila testing the waters and giving up. And then Warren stopped. He held up a page and squinted at it and said, "Wait, Julie, look at this." I leaned over. It was a home equity line of credit application from March 2011. $120,000. The signature on the application was Grant Mays. But the application also required, because of the trust, a co-signature from the beneficiary. And those it was. A signature that said, Julie R. Mays. My hands stopped moving. I stared at that signature. My name, in handwriting that wasn't mine. And I couldn't speak. I turned the page toward Warren because I didn't trust what I was seeing. I said, "Tell me I'm reading this wrong." He took the page. He looked at it for a long time. He shook his head. Someone had written my name on a bank document. Someone had practiced or guessed what my signature looked like and put it on a line next to my father's. The handwriting was close. Whoever did it had seen my signature before, but it was shaky. The R in my middle initial wobbled, like the pen had hesitated. Warren looked at the signature, looked at me, and said, "That's not your handwriting." "No," I said, "it's not." Every door she closed was a forgery.
The application was denied by the bank because the trust language required notarized consent, not just a signature, and there was no notarization. But the attempt was there, on paper, dated March 14th, 2011. I was 20 years old in March of 2011. I was a sophomore at UGA, living in a dorm room in Athens. I didn't even know this house was in a trust. There were 2 more attempts after that. A second HELOC application in 2015. Same forged signature, same denial. And a listing agreement with a real estate agent in 2018, attempting to put the house on the market for $347,000. That one was caught by the title company during a preliminary search when they found the trust on record. 3 attempts. 3 forgeries, all while I was living 43 blocks away, building my life, thinking I had no connection to that house anymore. Finding those signatures changed something in my body. Not just my mind, my body. My jaw was clenched so tight that night that I woke up the next morning with a headache behind my ears. If someone built walls around your life while secretly trying to take what was yours, would you want the truth to come softly? Or would you want them to feel every year they stole from you? Tell me in the comments, because I had to make that choice. And what happened next, the phone call I got 5 months later, is the reason I'm telling you this story tonight. In April of 2023, 5 months after I found the documents, Mila called me for the 5th time in 19 years. I was at my desk at work when my phone lit up. The caller ID said Grant Mays, but I knew who it was. Mila always used his phone. I answered. "Julie?" Her voice was different, softer, like she was trying on a version of herself she hadn't worn in years. "Julie, honey, I'm calling because your father had a stroke." My chest went tight. I pushed back from my desk. I said, "When?" 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks. My father had a stroke 3 weeks before and nobody called me. "He's home now," she said. "He's recovering. But things are complicated. Financially. The medical bills are... We need to talk about the house." But for a few seconds before she said that, for a few seconds while she was talking about the stroke and his recovery, I was just a daughter. I wasn't thinking about trusts or forgeries or anything. I was thinking about my father in a hospital bed. I was thinking about whether he was scared. For those few seconds, I almost forgot everything. And then she said, "the house," and it was like a switch flipping back. The warmth drained out and something harder took its place. I said, "I'm listening." Mila laid it out. Grant's stroke had left him with limited mobility on his left side. He couldn't work. He'd been doing part-time consulting for an engineering firm, making maybe $2,800 a month. Insurance covered some of the hospital stay, but not the home care, not the physical therapy, not the medication. She said they owed $74,000 in medical bills, and it was growing every month. "The house is worth close to $400,000 now," she said. "If we sell it, we can pay off the debt, get your father into a proper care facility, and I can find something smaller." She said it all like it was perfectly reasonable, like she was asking me to co-sign a gym membership. I said, "And you need my signature because of the trust?" Dead silence. Then, "You know about the trust?" "I know about the trust, Mila." More silence. I could hear her breathing. "Julie, I understand you might have feelings about all of this, but your father needs help. He needs his daughter." And that was when she said it. The second one. The one that still makes my jaw clench. She said, "Julie, I know we haven't had the closest relationship, but I have been the one here. Every day, for 19 years. I changed my entire life for your father. And I've always made sure important things got handled. The mail, the bills, the insurance, all of it. So if you're thinking about being difficult over a piece of paper, just remember who actually stayed. Who actually stayed. Like I chose to leave. Like I wasn't 16 years old when she smiled at me across that kitchen table and told me my own face was too painful for my father to look at. I didn't respond. I let the silence sit there for a good 10 seconds. Then I said, "I need to think about it." And right before she answered, for maybe half a second, I heard something in the pause. Her breath caught. Not dramatically, just this small, tight inhale, like under all the strategy and the rehearsed calm, there of a woman who knew she was running out of moves. It wasn't remorse. It was closer to the sound a person makes when they realize they're standing on a floor that's about to give way. Then the mask snapped back. She said, "Don't take too long. The bills aren't waiting." I conflup. And for the first time in maybe my entire adult life, I smiled because Mila didn't know what I had. She didn't know about the 73 pages spread across my dining room table. She didn't know about the forged signatures. She didn't know that I'd already had an attorney review everything. She didn't know that the woman she threw out had been quietly building a case for 5 months. Listen, if you're still here, just hit that like button and make sure you're subscribed. Because what happened at that kitchen table on Gaston Street? I still can't believe I went through with it. Okay, so, after Mila's call, I sat at my desk for a long time. And then I called Warren. Warren picked up on the second ring. I told him about Mila's call, about the stroke, the medical bills, the ask. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "She's desperate. People do stupid things when they're desperate. What do you want to do?" And that was the question, wasn't it? Because part of me, and I'm being honest here, part of me wanted to just sign the papers. Not for Mila, for my dad. He was 61, he'd had a stroke, he was sitting in that house barely able to walk, and despite everything, despite the silence, despite the abandonment, despite 19 years of choosing her over me, he was still my father. There was a night, about a week after Mila's call, where I came home from work and sat at my kitchen table with my phone in my hand. I had Mila's number pulled up. I was going to call her and say, "Fine, send me the papers, I'll sign." I sat there for 20 minutes. My thumb was on the call button. I thought about my dad's voice, or what was left of it after the stroke, and I thought maybe it would just be easier. But then I'd look at those documents. I'd look at my forged signature, and I'd think about my mother, sick and dying, sitting with a lawyer to make sure her daughter would be protected. She spent some of her last weeks alive doing that. For me. I couldn't let that go. Not for Mila's convenience. Over the next 3 weeks, I prepared. Warren and I went through every document, organized everything chronologically. I had the original trust agreement, the 3 forged applications, the county recorder's inquiry log, the real estate listing from 2018 that Mila had initiated without my knowledge or consent. One evening, Warren stopped sorting pages and looked at me and said, "Julie, I need to ask you something. Are you ready for what this is going to do? Not to Mila, to you, to your father, to whatever is left between you and him." I didn't answer right away, because I didn't know. I put it all in a folder, a blue folder, the kind you get at Office Depot for $1. Nothing fancy, just paper. My attorney reviewed everything one more time. She said, "Julie, you have grounds for criminal fraud charges. The forgery alone, that's a felony in Georgia. But the 2011 attempt? The statute of limitations has almost certainly passed. The 2015 and 2018 attempts are still actionable." I said, "I know. What do you want to do with it?" "I want to look her in the face." She nodded. "Then you should know. Your father's life estate means he can stay as long as he's living there. You can't force him out, but you absolutely can refuse the sale. And you can absolutely report the forgery." And then she gave me one more thing. She'd subpoenaed the bank's records through the county and found something beyond the forgeries. She pulled out a single page and set it on the desk between us. The bank's original denial letter for the 2011 HELOC application. They flagged the signature as inconsistent with your records on file. They sent a notification letter to the trust beneficiary at the property address. That letter was sent to 1847 Gaston Street. She paused. It was signed for by Mila Kessler on April 2nd, 2011. The room tilted. The forgeries were bad enough, but this was something else. She had intercepted my mail. She had signed for a document addressed to me, at my mother's house, about my trust, and she never told me. She took it out of the mailbox, she read it, and she buried it. While I was 20 years old and living in a dorm room, having no idea any of this existed. You don't protect someone from information unless you know the information would destroy what you're building. I put that letter in the blue folder too. I said, "I just want her to know that I know." And I called Mila back. I said, "I'll come to the house on Saturday. We can talk about everything in person." She sounded relieved. She actually sounded grateful. She said, "Thank you, Julie. That's all I'm asking. Just a conversation." I said, "I'll be there at 2. That Saturday, May 13th, 2023, I woke up at 6 a.m. I couldn't sleep anyway. The blue folder was on my kitchen counter, 31 pages inside. I'd been over them so many times the edges were soft. I got dressed. Jeans, a white button-down, my mother's watch. I'd been wearing that watch since Opal gave it to me after the funeral. A small gold Seiko with a scratched face. I stood in the bathroom and I looked at myself in the mirror, and I adjusted the clasp and I thought, "You look like her. That's what Mila told you. You look just like her." And I didn't look away from my own reflection when I thought it. I just stood there and let it be true. And then a fear hit me that I hadn't planned for. Not general nerves, a specific, concrete fear. What if I put every document on that table and my father looked at them and looked at Mila and chose her? What if he'd known all along? What if he watched her forge my name and said nothing? The trust, the forgeries, the intercepted mail. None of it proved my father was innocent. It only proved Mila was guilty. And I wasn't sure I could survive learning they'd done it together. I drove to Gaston Street. Down Abercorn,
past the squares, past Forsyth Park where the fountain was running. I turned onto Gaston, and the oaks closed in overhead like a tunnel, and I could see the house at the end of the block. The house looked smaller than I remembered. The porch railing needed painting. The garden was overgrown. My mother used to keep gardenias along the front walk, and they were all dead now, just woody stumps in dry soil. I sat in my car for maybe 5 minutes. The blue folder was on the passenger seat, and I thought about something my grandmother Opal told me once. She said, "The people who take from you always expect you to be too tired to come back for it. The surprise isn't that you fight. The surprise is that you remember." I wasn't angry anymore. I'm not sure when the anger left exactly. Maybe somewhere between the third forged signature and the intercepted mail. What replaced it was something quieter, steadier. I knew exactly what I was walking into, and I knew exactly what I was carrying with me. If you were sitting in that car right now, with the folder on the seat next to you, with the engine idling and the May heat pressing against the windshield, with 19 years of silence stacked up behind you, would you go in? Or would you drive away and let the lawyers handle it? I need you to feel the weight of that threshold, because when I opened that car door, there was no undoing it. Drop your answer in the comments, because I genuinely wonder sometimes if I did the right thing. And what happens on the other side of that front door? I still have trouble talking about it. What I can tell you is this. I opened the car door. I picked up the blue folder, and I walked up those steps for the first time in 19 years. The gardenias were dead, but I could still smell the pine. Mila opened the door before I knocked. She was wearing a gray blouse, silver earrings, her hair freshly colored. She'd dressed up. She'd dressed up for me, or for the version of this conversation she'd rehearsed in her head. "Julie, come in." I stepped inside. The hallway was different. New paint, new light fixture, but the floors were the same. My mother's pine floors. They creaked in the same places. My father was in the living room. He was in a recliner by the window, thinner than the last time I'd seen him. His left hand rested on the armrest like it didn't quite belong to him. When he saw me, his face did something I wasn't ready for. His chin trembled. "Jules." "Hey, Dad." I sat on the couch. Mila sat in the chair across from me. The blue folder was on my lap. Mila started talking immediately. The medical bills, the therapy costs, the insurance gaps. She had numbers. $74,000 in outstanding debt, $2,100 a month in ongoing care. The house appraised at $389,000. She'd already spoken with a real estate agent. She said they could list it within 2 weeks if I signed. She slid a document across the coffee table toward me. "This is the consent form. It just needs your signature and a notary. I've already arranged for one to come Monday." I looked at the paper. Then I looked at her. "Mila," I said, "before I sign anything, I need to show you something." I opened the blue folder. I placed the first document on the coffee table. This is the original trust agreement my mother created in 2004. I'm sure you've seen it. Mila's eyes went to the paper. Her expression didn't change. I placed the second document next to it. This is a home equity line of credit application from March 2011 for $120,000. It has my father's signature on it, and mine. I paused. Except I didn't sign it. I was 20 years old. I was in a dorm room in Athens. I didn't know this trust existed. Now her expression changed. This is a second application from 2015, third page down. Same forged signature. And this? This is a listing agreement from 2018, attempting to sell the house for $347,000. Also without my consent.
My father was watching. His good hand gripped the armrest. Mila's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Then she started to say something. "Julie, your father handled," and stopped. She reached for her water glass on the side table, picked it up, set it back down without drinking. She tried again. Your father handled those. I didn't. Mila, I said it quietly. This is a letter from First Coastal Bank, dated April 2011, addressed to me at this address. It's a notification that someone applied for credit against my trust property. It was signed for at this door by Mila Kessler on April 2nd. I placed the signed receipt on the table. The room was silent. I could hear the clock in the hallway, the same clock my mother bought at an antique store on Bull Street when I was 9. My dad said, "What is this?" Mila said, "Grant, let me—" "No." My father's voice was rough, strained, but clear. "What is this, Mila? What did you do?"
Grant, I was trying to help. The house was just sitting here. We needed the equity, and the taxes alone were— Julie wasn't— She wasn't part of—
She was reaching for reasons the way a person reaches for handrails in the dark, grabbing one and letting go before it held any weight. "She forged my name?" My father looked at me. "She forged your name?" 3 times, Dad. He stared at Mila, and I watched something happen that I'd waited 19 years to see. I watched my father look at his wife and finally, see her clearly. "You told me Julie didn't want to be involved," he said. "You told me she didn't care about the house. You said she signed those papers and then stopped returning calls." Mila's face was white. Her hand went to her earring, twisting it, this small fidgeting motion that had nothing to do with anything. "Grant, I never signed anything." My voice was calm, and I surprised myself with how steady it was. "I never saw those papers. I never stopped wanting to talk to you. She told you I didn't care?" My father's eyes filled with tears. And Mila, she tried one more time. She leaned forward and she said, "You weren't here, Julie. Not for his birthday. Not for his surgery. Not for any of it. You don't get to show up 19 years later with a folder and pretend you were the one who suffered. Everything I did, everything, was for this family." I was 16. 4 words. That's all I said. I was 16. The silence after that was the loudest thing I've ever heard. My father put his face in his hands. His shoulders shook. And Mila sat there in her gray blouse and her silver earrings. And for the first time in 19 years, she had nothing to say. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I closed the blue folder. I stood up. "I'm not signing anything," I said. "The house stays in the trust. My attorney has copies of everything, including the forgeries. I haven't decided yet whether to file a report with the police. But I want you to understand something, Mila." She looked up at me. "This house was never yours. It was my mother's. And she made sure of that." I left. I made it to my car before I broke. I sat in the driver's seat with the engine off, and I cried so hard I couldn't see. My hands were gripping the steering wheel like it was the only solid thing left. My whole body was shaking. Not from cold, not from fear, just from the weight of what had just happened finally landing. Not angry crying, just everything. 19 years of everything. Relief that my father hadn't known. Grief for the years I'd lost thinking he didn't care. Fury that Mila had built an entire fiction and lived inside it comfortably for 2 decades. And under all of it, this ache that didn't have a name. The thinking of being right about something you wished you'd been wrong about. I sat there for I don't know how long, maybe 20 minutes. The May sun was coming through the windshield and the car was getting hot, and I didn't move. I finally turned the car on. I drove to Forsyth Park, and I sat on a bench near the fountain, and I called Warren. I couldn't get a full sentence out for the first 3 minutes. He's sitting. When I finally calmed down, he said, "How do you feel?" And I said, "Like I just pulled a splinter out that's been in there since I was 60. It hurts worse right now when the what it was after. That years. About of happened after. 2 days later, your father called me. Not Mila. Him. His eyes was slow. The stroke affected his speech, but he was clear. He said, "Jules, I dinking. I swear to God, I spending what who did." I believed him, not because he deserved it, but because I'd spent 19 years watching his passivity destroy everything. And passivity was your Yorick. He becoming school against me. He just didn't fight for me. And you're its own kind of paradox, but it wasn't the same. He asked if we could talk. Regularly. I said yes. He told me that after I left on Saturday, he and Mila had a conversation that lasted 4 hours. He said things he'd never said to her. He asked about every phone call she'd made on his behalf. Every "Julie doesn't want to come" excuse. Every "she's busy, she's moved on, she doesn't care about us." 19 years of a story Mila had constructed, and in one afternoon, it collapsed. By the end of June, Mila moved out. She took the white Lexus. It was a different one now, newer, and she went to stay with her sister in Valdosta. My father called me the day she left and said, "She's gone, Jules." I said, "Okay." He said, "I should have seen it. I should have seen all of it." "Yeah, Dad, you should have." We sat with that for a while. Neither of us tried to make it smaller. The community found out in pieces. Mila had been active in the neighborhood association, the garden club, the historical society. She'd been Mila May's devoted wife, pillar of the community for almost 2 decades. When people started hearing what happened, the forgeries, the exile, the intercepted mail, some of them couldn't believe it. A woman from the garden club sent me a Facebook message that said, "I hope you know your stepmother gave 20 years of her life to that family, and this feels very one-sided." I read it twice, closed the app, and didn't respond. But a woman named Priscilla Tanaka, she lived on the next block and had known my mother. She called me. She said, "Julie, I want you to know something. Your mother came to our book club the month before she died. She could barely walk, and she told all of us, I put the house in Julie's name. Don't let anyone take it from her. I've been carrying that for 20 years. I couldn't speak for a while after that call. It's been almost 3 years now. My father still lives at 1847 Gaston Street. His life estate is intact. I would never take that from him. He has a caretaker who comes 3 days a week. I hired her. I pay $1,600 a month for her services, and I don't mind it because my father is my father, and the house is his home too, even if it's in my name. We talk every Sunday. Not long conversations. His speech is still slow, and he gets tired, but we talk. Last month, he told me about a cardinal that's been visiting the back porch every morning. He said, "It sits on the railing where your mama used to put her coffee. Every single morning, Jules." I planted new gardenias along the front walk in October. It took a full Saturday. My hands were covered in dirt and my back was killing me. And when I stood up and looked at them, these tiny green plants in a row, exactly where my mother's used to be, I thought, she'd be so mad at how long they were dead. I'm still a city planner. I got promoted last year to principal planner. I'm overseeing a historic preservation project in the Victorian district now. $2.3 million budget, 14 buildings. The irony isn't lost on me. I spend my days preserving old houses, and the most important old house in my life is one my mother preserved for me from beyond the grave. Warren still drives down from Macon once a month. We have dinner. He tells me stories about Opal that I've never heard. Last time, he told me that Opal once threatened to drive to Savannah and handle Mila myself, and he had to physically take her car keys. I laughed so hard I almost choked on my pasta. Tucker Mays, my half-brother. Mila and my dad's son. He's 19 now, freshman at Georgia Southern. He reached out to me in September through Instagram. His message was one line. I didn't know any of it. Can we talk? We met for coffee in Statesboro. He looked like my dad. Same jaw, same quiet eyes. He said Mila never told him anything about me beyond, "Your father has a daughter from before. She doesn't come around." He grew up in that house, my mother's house, and he didn't even know I existed as a real person until the whole thing blew up. He heard Mila say, "That girl is going to destroy this family," the night of the confrontation, and he didn't even know which girl she meant. He asked me if I was angry at him. I said no. I said it wasn't his fault, and I meant it. 2 kids raised in the same house by the same woman who made sure neither of us knew the other existed as anything more than a footnote. We've had lunch twice more since then. We're not close yet, but we're something. And that's more than I had before. As for Mila, she's still in Valdosta. She and my father officially divorced in January of 2024. The settlement was simple because the main asset, the house, was never hers to claim. She got the Lexus, some furniture, and half of my father's retirement account. After medical bills, that wasn't much. I never filed the police report for the forgeries. My attorney keeps the file. Warren thinks I should. My dad asked me not to. I haven't decided. Some days, I think the truth coming out was enough. Other days, I think about that 20-year-old girl whose name was forged on a bank document while she was studying for midterms, and I want accountability. I don't know. I'm still figuring that part out. I went back to the house last Sunday. Not for paperwork, not for drama, just to sit on the porch with my dad. It was one of those Savannah evenings where the air is warm and the light goes gold, and the whole city feels like it's exhaling. My dad was in his chair. I was on the steps. We drank sweet tea and didn't say much. At one point, he said, "Your mama would have liked seeing you here." I said, "Yeah, she would have." And that was enough. Okay, listen. If you stayed with me through all of that, I need you to know that wasn't easy to tell. Sitting here talking about Mila, about my dad, about the years I lost, it doesn't get lighter, but it gets clearer. And there's something about saying it out loud, knowing someone's actually listening, that makes it feel less like it happened to me alone. So thank you, really. If this story made you think about someone in your own life, someone who took what wasn't theirs and expected you to be too tired to notice, I want to hear about it. Leave a comment, not because I'm asking you to perform your pain, but because I think sometimes we need to see our own stories reflected in someone else's words to know we're not crazy. And I need to say this part clearly. What Mila did, the forgeries, the lies, the years she kept me away, none of that was normal. And if you're in a situation where someone is slowly erasing you from your own family, where you can feel it happening, but you can't prove it, you're not imagining it. That's real. And you don't owe silence to the people who benefit from it. If this meant something to you, hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because stories like mine, they don't get told enough. People like Mila count on silence. And the best thing we can do is just keep talking. And if you want to hear more stories like this, there are plenty. Hit that next video. I promise you, you're not alone in any of this. One last thing. I'm Julie Mays. I'm 34 years old. I'm a city planner in Savannah, Georgia, and I live 43 blocks from the house my mother saved for me. The woman who tried to take it? She's renting a 1-bedroom apartment in Valdosta, alone. I didn't plan that. I didn't wish for it, but I noticed it. Some mornings, I drive past Gaston Street on my way to work. I slow down, just for a second, and I look at the porch. The gardenias are coming in, the porch light is on, and the pine floors still creak in the same places. My mom made sure of that.